Well, hello everyone. This is Mark Ladonio, the Director of Evangelization here at Stella Maris. And with me today is Father Mark Foley, one of our parochial vicars. He gave his testimony, or at least some version of it, at one of our Wednesday night gatherings a couple weeks ago, and we attempted to record it. Unfortunately, we're not always tech whizzes here in the church, and there was a bit of a failure, and we weren't able to capture it. It was a great event. There were a lot of people there, and a lot of people got to hear just how the Lord has been at work in Father Mark's life, and eventually called him to lay his life down as one of his priests. And so we know that there are a lot of people in our parish and maybe beyond who really would love to hear Father Mark share a bit of his heart and his story and his calling to the priesthood. So we're taking some time today to sit down with him and to have him share it here. And I hope it nourishes you and encourages you and challenges you, and hopefully you can share it with others too who somehow might be touched by the Holy Spirit. So thanks for being with us, Father Mark.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome, Mark. And it is. It's great to be here with you. And for all those who are listening to this, just be reassured. Mark is wearing his Packer swag. Proud Packer fan. So it's always good to see. And he's got a really amazing view of the Blessed Mother from his office window as well. So she'll be watching over us during this talk. But so I'm just really glad to be here, Mark, and I'm glad to just be able to share my testimony again. I just wanted to start this testimony. I found a while ago a quote from Pope Benedict XVI, and this was something he was saying during a homily he gave at the funeral of the servant of God, Monsignor Luigi Giussani. And I just thought this was really beautiful, and so I'm just going to share it. During this homily, Pope Benedict said that Father Giussani kept the gaze of his life, of his heart, always fixed on Christ. It was in this way that he understood that Christianity is not an intellectual system, a collection of dogmas, or moralism. Christianity is instead an encounter. It's a love story. It's an event. Seeing Christ, Giussani truly knew that to encounter Christ means to follow him. This encounter is a road, it's a journey, and it's a journey that also passes through the valley of darkness. And I just really loved this quote because I think it kind of captures my understanding of what it means to be a Catholic and what it means to be a Christian. So, my journey, my walk with Christ really began back in 1982 when I was born, and I think as many people know, I was born in Ireland, and for 10 years, that's where myself and my older sister and my parents lived. Now, growing up, we were not practicing Catholics. We never went to Mass. My only memory of going to Mass was from my first communion. That is the only time I can remember ever being inside of a Catholic church. So just very distant from the faith, not practicing at all. But that was all about to change. In 1991, my parents made the decision that they wanted to move to America. So the plan really is that my dad was going to come over first, and my parents had settled on Seattle. That's where they really wanted to live. And so my dad was going to come over first. He'd found a job in Seattle, and then he was going to work for a while, save up some money, and then find a place for myself, my mom, my sister to live. And then when that was all ready, then, the three of us would then come over to America and join him. Well, so my dad gets on a plane, and he's taking a plane from Dublin to Chicago, and then from Chicago out to Seattle. So when he gets on the plane, he sits down next to an American, and they just start hitting up a conversation. Now, at the time, you could smoke on these planes, and so my dad was exchanging Irish cigarettes with American cigarettes. And for some reason, just my dad and this American, they just really clicked. They got on very well. So it's about 2 hours into this flight. And my dad turns to the American and he says, "Hey, so, what exactly do you do for a living?" And the American turned to my father and said, "Well, I'm actually a Catholic priest." And my dad, I think his face probably went as red as the glass of wine in front of him, because if you know my poor father at all, he's a true Irishman, and well, his language isn't always the cleanest. So this isn't he wasn't exactly saying things that you should be saying to a Catholic priest. But regardless, they had a really good flight together. And so when the plane landed in Chicago, the priest was getting off the plane, and he turned to my dad and he said, "Hey, if you ever need anything, here's my phone number and here's my name, and just please, just give me a call. If I can help you, I will." So my dad kept that. He then took the flight out to Seattle, and he worked in Seattle for a few months and ended up getting in a work injury. And so he had to come back to Ireland. And so when he got back to Ireland, my dad and my mom just really thought that this was like the American dream. Like, our American dream is over. But then my dad remembered that Catholic priest, and he found his phone number. He called him and he said, "I don't know if you'll remember me or not, but I'm the Irishman that you sat next to on a plane a few months ago. I could really use some help." And so the Catholic priest said, "Absolutely, come on over. I'd be delighted to help you." And to this day, that Catholic priest would say that the moral of the story is be careful who you talk to on a plane. So we ended up coming over obviously to America. We landed in Highland, Wisconsin, which is down in the southwest part of the state. We ended up in Highland because this is where the priest was stationed at the time. His name, by the way, was Father John Urban, and he was a really, really great priest to me. He was a big part of my life. But I have to say that the transition from Ireland to America was a little bit of a difficult one. I was small. I was a small kid. I spoke funny. So I wasn't exactly welcomed by my classmates with open arms. But Father John was just immense during this time. He really introduced me to American culture. He taught me about baseball. He took me to a few Chicago Cub games. He would take me canoeing. He'd take me fishing. And he just really helped me to acclimate a lot into American life. And he helped me to make friends. So Father John was great. And I think really one of the most important things he did for me is he got me to become an altar server, which I absolutely loved, because at the time I found Mass so boring. So to be able to go and actually serve, it kind of helped pass the time a little bit. But I have to say that I really do think that this is where the initial seeds of my vocation came from, was as an altar server. And I know this is the case for many, many priests, that this is where they first started to hear the call. So yeah, Father John was great. We stayed in Highland for 9 months, and my parents were still just set on living in Seattle. So we ended up leaving Highland and we went out to Seattle, and we stayed in Seattle for about 9 months. But the West Coast is a very, very expensive place, and so we were only there for 9 months, and my parents decided they just couldn't afford it anymore. So we thought, well, let's just go back to Wisconsin, where Father John is. Now, at the time, he had actually been moved while we were in Seattle. So he was no longer in Highland. He was in Boscobel, Wisconsin. So we came back from Seattle to Boscobel, and again, Father John was good to us. He helped us find a home, helped us get set up, helped my dad find work. Boscobel was a tough place. It was a difficult place for me. When I was in Boscobel, I just started getting bullied an awful lot. And I would say the bullying was kind of intense. So I think as a way kind of cope with this, I just started doing a lot of things that just weren't me. So, for example, I would sneak some of my dad's cigarettes, and I'd start trying to smoke them in front of people in order to just try appear to be cool. Or sometimes like I would sneak out of the house late at night, and we'd meet down at a park, me and my friends, and we would drink like these old disgusting beers that we'd found. And yeah, just bad language, like just really started using bad language. So I think my parents, like, they really started to notice this change in me, and they were just kind of becoming a bit concerned. But so yeah, I look back on basketball not with a whole lot of fondness, but I have to say it was when I was in 8th grade that I really had my first encounter with the Lord, my first real encounter with Jesus. And what had happened is I was sitting in my room one night, and I found this children's Bible that Father John had given to me, actually my very first Christmas here in America. And I never opened it, never read it, never really had much interest in doing so. But I found this children's Bible, and I just sat there that night, and I was just reading through it. And I was just becoming very intrigued by many of the stories that I was reading. And then I came to this one story about Jesus and his healing of 2 blind men. And so I just want to read this, if I can, to you, because it just means a lot to me, and it's just always fun just to go back and to think about like where you first really encountered the Lord. So this is the story that I read that night. It says this. It says, people who were blind in the days of Jesus had no chance of living a normal life. There were no braille books, which can be read by filling bumps on pages. There were no guide dogs, which can help a blind person find his or her way through the streets. Blind people in Jesus' time had no choice but to beg for a living. There was no way they could find work. They were helpless. Everywhere Jesus went, people followed him who were hurting in mind and body. They begged Jesus to make them better. One day, there were 2 blind men following Jesus. Have mercy on us, Son of David, they called out. Jesus went into a friend's house, and the 2 men followed. There he turned and he asked them, do you really think I can make you see again? The 2 men were friends. They both heard the stories of Jesus healing people. They believed he was the Messiah. They had stumbled along the roads, bumping up against people as they followed Jesus. And now they were alone with him. Yes, Lord, they said. Jesus reached out his hands and touched their eyes. He said, what you believe can happen really will. Just keep on believing. Suddenly the men saw lights and colors. Then the shifting blurs became real things. They cried out as they saw Jesus' face smiling at them. Where there had been darkness, now there was light. The men were so happy, they went out and they told the news to everyone they met. Now, I don't know what really happened to me that night, but the only way I can describe it is I felt like I was just hit with some sort of almost like a supernatural gift of faith. Mm-hmm. The faith that Jesus can do things. And so when Jesus said these words, what you believe can happen really will, just keep on believing, I really did believe Jesus. And I thought, my goodness, I can ask Jesus for something, and if I believe that he can do it, he'll do it. He will do it. And so I remember just closing this Bible, and I turned to Jesus in my heart, and I said, Jesus, I really believe that you can do things. And so there is a girl in my class that I really, really like, and I would love for her to be my girlfriend. So Jesus, I'm just asking you to make her my girlfriend. Now, I look back on it, and it seems really silly, but I really believed Jesus could do this. And not only did I believe he could do it, but I believed it was really going to happen. She was going to be my girlfriend, because Jesus said I could ask, and if I believe, it would happen. And it was it was really awesome because 2 days later, this girl actually did become my girlfriend. Now I look back on it now, and I realize theologically there's a lot of things wrong with my prayer. However, it was the faith that I had that I feel like sometimes I just really miss. And to this day, I wish that I still had that level of faith in my prayer. But yeah, it was just a really beautiful encounter for me. And so from that point on, that really began my prayer life. And every single night, I would light a candle. I would open up my window, and I had these holy pictures of saints, and I would stick them around the window, and I would just talk to God. And that's how my prayer life began. And I would just talk to him about everything. I talked to him about the girls I liked, the teachers I didn't like, the bullies at the school, everything. But anyway, just because I was praying doesn't mean life became better. And my parents, again, realized that there was some changes happening in me, just in my personality. And so my parents and Father John Urban, they made a decision that for high school, they were going to send me to a high school seminary in La Crosse. Now, this high school seminary, it was located at the old seminary in La Crosse, which had now become the pastoral center. And this old seminary was a college seminary. It's where the college guys used to go. And then after college, they would head off then to major seminary, typically in Milwaukee. But the college seminary had been closed down for many years, and it had been turned into offices, much like Holy Name here in Madison. But at this seminary, there was about, I would say, 12 to 14 of us guys who would live together. And so we each had our own room, and we lived on 2 different floors, I believe it was. Yeah, it was 2 floors. And every day we would pray there, we would eat there, and then in the mornings we were transported to the local Catholic school, the co-ed Catholic school. And that's where we would take our classes, and that's where we'd play sports or whatever. So I have to say, I was 4 years there at that high school seminary program, and I loved it. They, for me, were just some of my best years. But I wasn't going to this high school seminary to discern priesthood. I was going because this is what my parents wanted for me. So my freshman year at this high school seminary was the year of my conversion. What had happened to me is it was Christmas of that year, and I was sitting in the seminary, and there was a guy there, one of my friends, and he had just come back from the Holy Land, and he wanted to sit down and just show with me some pictures that he had taken of the Holy Land. Now, this is how poorly catechized of a Catholic I was. I didn't even know what the Holy Land was. I had no idea that this was even a place. And so when he sat down and he started showing me the pictures of the places like where Jesus was born, the places where Jesus died, the places where, Jesus turned water into wine, the Last Supper, the room of the Last Supper, like all this stuff, like my mind was just blown. And all of a sudden, like, Jesus just became very real for me. And I thought, my goodness, like, this is true. Like, Jesus was a real person. And I can see the place where he was born. I can see the place where he died, where the Last Supper was, the Sea of Galilee. Everything just became really real to me. And from that moment on, I realized, like, I really wanted to take my faith serious. So it was a few days after this that I was in the library, and I found a book on the life of Pope St. Pius X. Now, this book caught my eye because the name of the seminary where I was at was St. Pius X Seminary. And so I thought, well, since I'm at this seminary named after St. Pius X, I should probably learn something about him. So I pick up his biography and I start to read it. And it was during the part of his life where he's an active priest, as I was reading that part, I was so struck by how St. Pius X was living out his priestly life. And as I read it, it was becoming clearer and clearer to me that this is exactly what I want to do with my life. I want to become a priest. And so I would say that it was through reading that that the real big seeds of my vocation were really planted deep within my heart. And so after reading about this, I went through a real big radical change. Before this, I'd been listening to, just bad music. So I took all those CDs, I threw them out. Before this moment, I really cared a lot about my appearance and my hair. I ended up just shaving my hair off, getting rid of all the clothes that I thought were just too fashionable, and just started dressing a lot more simply. I wore a big cross around my neck. And yeah, the change was it was dramatic. It was immense. So during this change, I wanted to learn so much about my faith. And one of the things that was so profound for me was learning about the Holy Eucharist. I had no idea that Jesus himself becomes truly present when the priest says the words over the bread, "This is my body, this is my blood." I had no idea that this was actually Jesus. So this was so transforming to me. So part of our seminary experience is that we were required to go to Mass every single day. Now, before I'd had this conversion, I went to Mass, but I always sat in the very back of the chapel and just was kind of hoping Mass would get over really quick. But after my conversion and after learning about the Holy Eucharist, I wanted to be as close to Jesus as I possibly could. And so I would sit in the very front row, as close to the altar as possible. And I always remember the priest, when he would consecrate the body and blood of Jesus, I would just be sitting there, kneeling there, just thinking, I can't believe I'm only 10 feet away from Jesus right now. This is just really amazing. So I became so fascinated by the Eucharist, so fascinated by Jesus in the Eucharist, that for lunch I would take my food. I don't know if this was a good thing to do or not, but I would actually take my food and I would go into the chapel and I would just sit by the tabernacle and I would just eat my lunch there with Jesus. So I would do this pretty much almost every lunch period. So yeah, these were just some real, I would say, golden years of my life. I was learning more and more about the faith. However, things changed a little bit my senior year of high school. I began to, for whatever reasons, just kind of question whether or not I was called to be a priest. I think the reality of the fact that I would never be married was starting to settle in my life and in my heart, and I was really starting to question, I don't know if I actually can be celibate, because I really do like girls a lot, and so the idea of sacrificing that just became tough, and I just began to question things. So obviously your senior year, you're thinking about college, you're thinking about what you're going to be doing next. I think, as many of you probably know, I've never been a big fan of school. I've never been good at school. And if I was going to continue on in seminary, I knew that where I was going to be going next would be really academically challenging and it would just be really difficult. So I don't know. I didn't feel ready for anything. And I just made the decision that I think what I'm going to do is just take a year off once I've graduated from high school and maybe just work and then maybe just save some money for college. So that's really what I did. I took a year off after high school, and what I didn't realize, I think, at the time is that I was really about to enter into just a really difficult phase of my life. So I took that year off from high school. I worked at Walmart. My job there was just unloading the trucks. During this time, I continued going to Mass. I was continuing to pray. I was continuing to meet with priests, continuing to kind of discern what does God want me to do with my life. And then something happened. My grandfather in Ireland passed away. And we made a decision, obviously, to go back to Ireland for his funeral. Now, this would mark my first time going back to Ireland in I'm not quite sure how long. 92, 2000. Yeah, just probably a little over 10 years. So we went back to Ireland for his funeral. And I just remember the whole thing being very strange. It's so strange, going back to like your old home country and just kind of remembering everything. And just something in me during this time was making me think and feel that I need to stay here in Ireland. And so I proposed the idea to my parents that I think I should stay here in Ireland and just help my grandmother out. She's a widow. She's old. She lives out in the country in the middle of nowhere. And she maybe could just use a bit of help during this time of change for her. So my parents agreed to it, that I would just spend the rest of the summer staying in Ireland and just helping my grandmother out. Now, on the surface, it seems like a great idea, right? I don't have anything else going on. It's a good thing to do. But this really would turn out to be a really bad decision. So I'm staying with my grandmother. I'm helping her out the best I can. But little by little over time, I stopped praying. I stopped going to Mass. And after being with my grandmother for a while, I decided that I think I might stay in Ireland a little longer than just the summer. And so I moved out of my grandmother's house. I found a place to live in a town called Killarney, and just renting a place with a few other people. And really what happened to me is I just started getting connected with bad people. Marijuana became a feature of my life. Every weekend became about drinking and getting as drunk as you possibly can get. Many memories of not remembering anything because I was so drunk. And yeah, girls, they just became another big part of my life. So it was really all just about drinking, women, and marijuana. And again, I just became very, very lost. And these were just really dark years for me. Well, things got worse. I ended up meeting a girl. And what happened is I ended up moving in with her. And we lived together for, I would say it was about 3 years. Her and I lived together. And yeah, this girl was a terrible influence on me. Her friends were a terrible influence on me. I was just doing things I never thought that I would do. And so it was just a really, really dark time. I was also very isolated from my extended family, my grandparents, aunts, uncles. I wasn't talking to anybody anymore. And the reason for that is because I was just so ashamed of the life that I was living. And I knew that if I went over to visit with them, I could not be honest about what was really going on in my life. I had no purpose. I had no direction. I had so many jobs. I got fired from so many jobs. Just ridiculous jobs. Yeah, again, just no purpose, no direction. My parents, who of course are back here in America, become concerned about me. They're hearing that I've kind of fallen off the radar. Nobody kind of knows what I'm doing or where I am. And so they give me a call from time to time. I don't really answer, again, because I'm just kind of embarrassed about what's going on and ashamed about what's going on. And so one day, my mom does get me on the phone. And she just asked me a few questions. You can tell she's kind of worried about me. And I let the name of the girl that I'm living with slip. And I knew as soon as I said that girl's name that I shouldn't have said her name, because I knew my mom, being a good mom, would go back and try to figure out who this girl was. So we ended that phone conversation. Of course, the first thing my mom did was go to Facebook, and she was able to find this girl's Facebook page. And of course, what my mom found on the Facebook page was not good. The various photographs and videos and things. She was just really upset by what she was seeing. Because, of course, I didn't post any of that on my Facebook. So now my mom is getting a clearer picture of what exactly it is that I'm up to, and she is not happy. So I think about 2 days after that phone conversation, I'm at a store, and I'm just purchasing some items, and I see my phone ringing, and it's my dad. And I'm not going to answer it because I'm just paying for stuff. And so I get done paying for things, and I step outside the store, and my dad had left me a voice message. And in this voice message, he was telling me, like, I need to call him back right away. And I could tell by his voice that I was in trouble. So I call my dad back, and my dad is livid. My dad is absolutely livid. And I always remember him saying to me, he said, I've been sitting here with your mother for the last 2 days. She's been bawling her eyes out. And what is it you are doing? Who is this girl? And so I eventually have to come clean about everything. And again, my dad is just so angry. And the conversation comes to an end, and he says to me, he's like, you have a choice. You either get rid of this girl, or you can consider yourself dead to us and to this whole family. And to this day, I still remember the sound of that phone flying through the air. And the phone call ended. And I realized, like, I had a choice to make. It's my family or this girl. And like, I'm still kind of ashamed to say that I ended up choosing the girl. So, yeah, really for a long time, I did not talk to my family, and things in my life just got worse and worse. So, again, just a really difficult, dark time for me. So I just got to a point where I knew I just could not continue to live the way that I was living. And I'll always remember the day I was down by this place called Ladies View. And it's this beautiful spot in Killarney that just overlooks this lake. And I was just sitting there. And as I was sitting there, I was just thinking about my time in high school seminary. I was thinking about God. I was thinking about that time that I thought I was going to be a priest. And it's like, what's happened to me? Like, how have I turned into this person? How did I go from that to this? And I just knew I needed to make big changes, and I needed to come back to my faith. And I needed God. I missed God, and I needed to come back. So eventually I ended up breaking things off with that girl, and I ended up finding a priest, and I ended up making a really good confession of the last, I think it was 5 years of my life. It was really beautiful. And then I got connected to some other like Catholic young adults in the area. But I just found that I wasn't really connecting very well with them. If I'm honest, they just seemed kind of strange. And I was just looking for like more normal Catholics. But everywhere I looked, I couldn't really find anybody. So the idea really came to me that what I need to do is I need to return back to America. I just need to come back to America. So I called up my parents, and I apologized to them for the way I'd been living and I told them I've broken up with that girl. I'm really sorry, Mom and Dad. Would it be okay if I came back to America? And so, my parents, being the good parents that they are, they of course welcomed me back with open arms. So yeah, I came back to America, and upon returning to America, I ended up joining this ministry called Spiritus. And what Spiritus does is it's like a group of young adults who just travel around the state of Wisconsin, and like they just do like confirmation retreats, or they do retreats for elementary school aged kids, and even high schoolers. We would do stuff for high schoolers. So for 9 months, I served on that Spiritus team. And this was a really, really important 9 months for me, because while I was serving on that team, I ended up falling in love with one of my teammates. She was a amazing, amazing girl, a really, really good Catholic. And so I became really convinced that this is the girl that I'm probably going to spend the rest of my life with. I'm going to marry her, and we're going to have a family. But as the months went by and as we were dating, I started to notice that I was not having a lot of peace. And I don't know why I couldn't find peace, because I really clicked well with this girl. I really liked her. We were praying together, serving God together. It's like, this is everything a young Catholic guy wants, So why am I not able to find peace in this? And so I remember I went to confession one time, and I was talking to a priest about this. And he had kind of brought up to me, he's like, well, have you ever thought about being a priest? And I immediately, I explained to him kind of my story, but I really dismissed that because I thought, no, that was just kind of a high school idea. Like, I'm more older now, I'm more mature, I've got this wonderful woman, and she's the one I want to marry. But just something about what he said just stuck with me. So her and I, we dated for a year. And after a year of dating, it was just very clear that neither her nor I were having peace about our relationship. And oddly enough, we ended up ending the relationship, and she decided that she wanted to go and discern religious life. And she told me that she felt I needed to go and discern priesthood. And it always makes me smile a little bit, because today she is now married with 2 children, and I'm a priest. And because I remember when she told me this, I was I was so mad. It's like, I don't want to be a priest. I want to marry you, But yeah, it just became clear to me. Something became clear to me, and this was the thing that became clear. I was really struggling to love both a girl and God at the same time. Mm-hmm. I'm like, I don't know why that is. It just feels like it has to be one or the other. I don't know how to do both things. And that's the one thing I really learned from my relationship with this girl. Now, you think I would have realized at the time that this was probably signs of a celibate vocation, mm-hmm. but that hadn't fully clicked for me yet. So anyway, I finished my time serving on the Spiritus team, broken up with this girl, and it just became clear to me then that the next step for me was I finally need to go to college. So what I decided to do was I went to MATC here in Madison, and I was part of their transfer program. And then after MATC, I wanted to transfer into like a good Catholic university and get a degree in theology. But I think, as many people know, a good Catholic university is expensive, and I do not have the money for that. So I ended up transferring into Cardinal Stritch University in Milwaukee. And it started out as a theology degree, but changed into a religious studies degree. That's just a decision that the university itself made. Cardinal Stritch was fine. It's maybe not the most orthodox place to go to, but it served me well, and I did end up with a degree in religious studies. And I did learn a few things along the way as well. So overall, I think my time at Stritch was good. But my time at Stritch, it was also really important. And I remember there were just two landmarks that I would say were really important for me, especially in my vocation to the priesthood. During my time, in college, both at MATC and Cardinal Stritch, this question of the priesthood just kind of kept coming up. It kept coming up, and I kept pushing it down. But as I was getting closer and closer to graduation, it just kept coming up over and over and over again. And I always remember there was this moment, and it was Christmas Day. And every single Christmas Day, we would go to Father John's house for Christmas. And this particular Christmas, we pulled into his driveway, and there was this small little green, it was a Ford Fiat or something that was sitting in his driveway. And inside this little car, there was a woman, and she was crying. And so my parents saw this, and they're like, Mark, you go check out, go see what's wrong with her. So I get out of the truck, and I go over to this woman, and I knock on her window. And I just ask her, are you okay? Is everything okay? Mm-hmm. And she says, is Father John home? Do you know if Father John is home? And I was like, well, let me go check, So I go inside Father John's house, and it's Father John. There's a lady sitting in a car, and she's crying her eyes out, and she's looking for you to talk to you. And he said, oh, tell her to come on in. Tell her to come in. So I tell her, I say, well, you can come inside, Father John's inside. And so she comes in, and Father John just sits her down, and he hands her a glass of wine and a cigarette. And it turns out that, this woman had just been really beaten pretty badly by her boyfriend. And, so she still had just a bit of blood, I remember, around her lip, a little bit of blood around her nose, and her face was just kind of puffed up. But she sat there, and she was just telling Father John what happened, and I just remember being so moved by this, that this woman who has family in the area, she's got sisters, she's got parents, she's got friends, but that she wanted to come to her priest during this really tough time. And that really left an impression on me. And just seeing the way that Father John was just very pastoral, I was just very moved by this whole experience. And I learned something from Father John about pastoral care. You just give somebody a glass of wine and a cigarette, and everything's fine. So but yeah, I was just very moved by that. And I just remember thinking afterwards, like, I wonder, Jesus, maybe I am supposed to be a priest. But anyway, there was another moment then that I think was really, in terms of my vocation, just really, really defining for me. And this was my very last year at Cardinal Stritch. I had been working for the theater department, and my job was to help them build the sets for the various plays that they put on throughout the year. And so I'd been working in the evening, and at the end of my work shift, I was closing up the wood shop, and as I was locking the door, I noticed again another girl that was crying. And I just noticed this girl because she's a girl that I'd seen around. I thought she was kind of pretty. She's crying, so I thought, okay, maybe this is a breakup, and I can go up, I can talk to her, and be the guy to comfort her. And so I approached the girl, and I just asked her, I said, is everything okay? Do you need to talk to somebody? And so I sat down, and she just started to open up, and sure enough, yeah, it was a breakup. And she just told me how heartbroken she is, and I can't really explain what happened. But I just, like, inside, in my heart, I changed from being a guy who saw an opportunity to maybe, get a new girlfriend, to a guy who just felt like this girl's father. And I just started to listen to her as a father would listen to her daughter. And when the conversation was done, I just remember giving her, just a hug. And there was nothing Christian or Catholic about our conversation. But I just reassured her, hey, if you ever want to talk again, I'm here. And I remember going out to my truck, and I'm sitting in my truck, and I just remember saying, Jesus, what is going on? Like, I've never felt like such a spiritual father like I have just now. And, like, are you actually calling me to be a priest? Like, are you calling me to be a spiritual father? And the thought didn't scare me, which scared me. But I don't know, it's like the Lord was just drawing me more and more and more to the priesthood. And so I finally made the decision that what I was going to do is I was going to apply for seminary. And my deal with God is this: you get 1 year. You get 1 year. I'm going to go to seminary for 1 year. And I'm going to discern. And if after 1 year I don't feel any peace about this priesthood thing, I am leaving. And I'm going to go find a nice girl and I'm going to marry her. And so I filled out my application to seminary. The Diocese of Madison accepted me as a seminarian. And I was sent up to St. Paul, Minnesota, to do my first 2 years of seminary. And I have to tell you that within my first month of seminary, I knew that this is exactly where I needed to be. And I knew just within that first month that God was calling me to be a priest. And so, yeah, I was ordained a Catholic priest on May 26th of 2023, the feast day of St. Philip Neri. And I have absolutely loved being a priest. I've been here at Stella Maris the entire time. I feel so blessed to be a priest. I really do love being a priest, and I really love it here at this parish. And I've been really blessed to have two great pastors in Father Chad and Father Eric. And of course, I think what always makes a parish so great are the parishioners and the people there. And there's just been so many people here at this parish who have been just incredibly kind and incredibly good to me. And I'm just happy to be here serving as a parochial vicar. Yeah, so I guess, Mark, that is my story in a nutshell.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you have any questions or anything, but yeah, I'm just really glad to share my story and to just talk about the ways that I think Jesus really has impacted my life. And of course, there's a lot more to it, but we'd be here all day. So
Yeah, well, right, yeah. Well, no, I mean, I really appreciate it, Father Mark. I know that the people who came out on that Wednesday night, just very grateful to hear you share all that, and I'm sure this will be good things to chew on and meditate on for people who listen here. And yeah, I mean, a couple of things struck me just, having heard it two times now.
Yeah.
I guess just first of all, the providence of God, right? Like how, I mean, many things throughout your story you share, just what if this thing had gone this way or this thing had gone that way, or you're able to kind of sense this voice in your heart here and there. But I mean, really, I just think about the fact that you mentioned, your dad gets on this flight to a connecting flight, to Chicago, to Seattle, and just happens to be on this flight with this priest from the Diocese of Madison, and they happen to get in this conversation,
Yeah.
and that it's that man, Father John Urban, was instrumental in bringing you to America and in your own life of faith from there, and his example of the priesthood, and when you were a kid, there's no way you were planning out, oh, somehow we're going to encounter this priest from Wisconsin in the United States, and that's going to be life-changing. So that's the first thing that sticks out to me, right? Like the God's providence and how he kind of uses people, and like thank God for people like him. I think of my own kind of conversion and all the different people who played a big part in it. And tangentially, I mean, I've never met Archbishop Charles Chaput, but he took a very vested interest in my friend Father Scott Jablonski, and really helped him journey into the Catholic faith, and then that kind of by another degree helped me become Catholic. And so it's just kind of awesome to hear how God's providence worked in that way, how he, Father John, was just open and willing to invest in people. And sometimes I'm the director of evangelization, and sometimes I think we make it too complicated. Think about like, what's this program, or what are we going to do that's going to get everyone to really put their faith in the Lord and change the tide of people not really practicing their faith, etc. But in many ways it's just that simple person to person connection, and so I don't know, that just kind of struck me, and it obviously kind of has filtered down into the way you approach your own priesthood. You were kind of saying that at the end, right? How you saw him with just kind of caring for that woman, and then how that kind of transpired in your own, caring for that girl. And then I think anyone who kind of knows you here at Stella Maris, we all have our strengths, we all have our weaknesses, we all have our particular personalities, and I mean, anyone who knows you here knows like just that one-to-one connection and like really caring for people, and that setting is just a way you've been a great gift to us, so thank you.
And I think that's the thing that sometimes when I look back on my life with Father John, it really was the way that he was able to reveal God to me as well, I think.
Right.
Like when I would think about I wonder what God the Father is like, I would think back to Father John and the way that he just really loved me in some ways as a son, as a spiritual son. He was just really just a very important part of my life. And I always think what was so cool about Father John is I remember when I filled out the application for seminary, I remember sitting down and telling him, I'm gonna go and join the seminary, Father. And he was just so over the moon. So over the moon. And so, he died my very first year of seminary.
Okay.
And what was so beautiful is that in his will, he left me his chalice.
Really?
And so for my very first Mass as a priest, I got to use his chalice, So he's always an important part of my life. But I just think it's the way that I was really able to encounter God through him. And one of the most important things Father John taught me about God is that everything's going to be okay. I mean, me and my family went through we went through a lot of very stressful, difficult times. And Father John always had a way of making everything feel like it was going to be okay. And when I think back on that, it's like it was just God's way of really being a father to me and to my family, and just knowing everything's gonna be okay. This is all unfolding under the providence of God.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to be worried. You don't have to be anxious. God will take care of this. And so I think that's really one of the big lessons that Father John taught me. So yeah, I think you're right. It's just important, the people that God puts in our lives. They're not a mistake. As you're saying, Father Scott for you was so important, and then how, Bishop Chaput was important in his life. But yeah, it is interesting, Mark. I think like how much evangelization is just about relationships.
Yeah, exactly.
Not so much programs, but relationships.
That's right. Yeah.
And I'm learning that, even now as a spiritual director, it's really about forming good relationships with the people I do spiritual direction with. And I think sometimes it's that relationship that maybe they find more helpful than anything I have to say. So,
well, and I imagine you're a fruitful spiritual director, because what I was taught at a certain point is that the main role of a spiritual director isn't necessarily to like give a bunch of you should do this, you shouldn't do this, but to really help that person be aware and sensitive to the voice of God in prayer. And as you kind of shared your story just now, it seemed like even at moments in your life when you weren't necessarily seeking out God, sometimes you would have these moments of clarity and these moments of somehow being open to the Holy Spirit and hearing the voice of God. And I know that you are at this point a man of rich prayer and a man who's very attentive to the voice of the Lord. And so I think, if you in your role as a spiritual director and whatever we can do as priests and formation staff, like to help people hear the voice of God. That just seemed, that's it. That was another kind of key theme I just picked up in your testimony. And I think, boy, if we're doing that and the work we do, if you're doing that in your direction, that's a great gift that people can be offered, and so that they too, can kind of be able to respond like you have.
And I think just becoming more sensitive to the way that the Lord speaks has just become very key for me, because I think I didn't always realize sometimes that this was the Lord.
Sure.
And it took me a while to discover.
Yes.
Like, oh, okay, this is how the Lord kind of speaks to me. This is how my relationship with Him works. And so, I think you're right, Mark. Like trying to help people to discover how is the Lord speaking in my life, how does He speak in my heart, really is so important, because I will always say this, like what I have to say is really not that important. What He has to say though is the most important thing, and it's always been what He has to say that has been I found just so healing and transforming. So it's a lot of fun. I will say, like, knowing that you can have a living relationship with Christ, and that He speaks, He talks to us, He moves us, like He'll inspire us to pick up a book, right? Like Pius X, He'll inspire you to pick that up,
right.
or go talk to this person, or whatever it is. Those are all those beautiful moments of providence.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, right? Like for sure, there's like, really like supernatural, otherworldly, miraculous ways that God moves in the world and God moves in people's lives. But those are the exception, most of the time. It's these everyday things. Yeah. This person here, this book there, this conversation, this task at work. Like, God is not absent from that. He's wanting to meet us there. It's too often we're just kind of bringing it back full circle. We're like those blind men, and we just need to be opened up and recognize the Lord is coming to encounter us in all of these ways.
Yeah.
And we just need to kind of be a bit more open to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember a friend telling me, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Good Will Hunting.
Well, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
But yeah, a friend of mine, I mean, he had a really powerful experience while watching that movie. Like, God really spoke
Sure.
to him. Like, you remember that scene at the end where Matt Damien is getting this hug from Robin Williams?
Mm-hmm.
And I think Robin Williams is saying something like, it's not your fault. It's
That's
not
right.
your fault.
It's not
You
your
know?
fault. Mm-hmm.
And through that scene, like
Mm-hmm.
a friend of mine had a really just a powerful moment with the Lord
Mm-hmm.
in that.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's so ordinary, watching a movie,
Right.
But yet the Lord can use that.
Mm-hmm.
He can use music, you know, all these different
Mm-hmm.
things that are just so ordinary,
Right.
to really speak to us.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a lot of fun just
Mm-hmm.
seeing the way the Lord is moving, and
Mm-hmm.
and I think too, you know, Mark, you know, even in the dark valleys,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I think something like I never really expressed in this testimony here was, you know, just even my own battles with depression. You know, that's
Mhm.
been an ongoing thing for me. But even in those dark valleys, in those times of emptiness, even there, I can still feel the Lord calling me to something more.
Yeah.
You know, like when you feel empty, it's like I feel empty because I know I'm supposed to be full. And so that emptiness is kind of what draws me to
Yeah.
God, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, even in the dark days when I was far from God,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize it at the time, but I was still hearing Him,
Right.
you know.
Right.
So
Well, thank you, Father Mark. I'm
Yeah.
sure we could keep talking, but we've been going on nigh an hour here. So thank you guys for tuning in.
Yeah.
I hope this is, again, encouraging, challenging in good ways. We're very grateful for you to be one of our priests, Father Mark, and for all of you who are listening. I hope the Lord richly blesses you through all this, and hopefully you can come out to some of our next Wednesday sessions where we can be inspired in faith and grow in prayer with one another. So thanks so much.
thank you. Bye.